Strickland versus Dricus Du Plessis this Saturday in Toronto, Canada. UFC 297 is nearly here, so let's start from the first fight and break it down to the last fight. Vamos. At the first fight of the night in the early prelims, we have a flyweight fight of Malcolm Gordon versus Jimmy Flick. Here are the betting odds if you care. This is like such an NPC fight. Like, both these guys are just funny looking, you know what I mean? Like, Malcolm actually has fought some pretty good guys, but he's lost to him, like Amir and Mukayev. So, I mean, he's had a little bit of experience, and Jimmy Flick is like, he's just like, who is that? He's lost his last 2 fights via TKO and only has 1 win in the UFC. Both of these guys have flaws in their games. Both of these guys like to grapple, but like, I don't know, like enough. Like, both these guys aren't the best, you know what I mean? So they have a lot of holes in their game and stuff like that. So could there be submission? Maybe. Could there be a knockout? Maybe. Both these guys are a little bit chinny, you know? Like, these guys are prone to getting like finished. So I don't know, just a weird fight. With the second fight of the night, we have a women's flyweight fight with Jasudavicius versus Priscilla Cacheoria. I probably said it wrong, but here are the betting odds. I mean, this fight's kind of like, I don't really care about this fight. But Jasmine is coming off a loss against Tracy Cortez, and Priscilla is also coming off a loss. I will say Jasmine's actually like a pretty good fighter, and both of these girls are like decent. Like, they're just decent. Jasmine is more of a wrestler, and Priscilla is like a little bit more of a striker. Like, Jasmine's alright, like I said. And Priscilla beat Ariane Lipski, which is actually now pretty impressive after Lipski beat Casey O'Neill. I don't know what else to say about this fight. It's probably me, Jasmine, because she has home court advantage, I guess, and she's just better in my opinion. Alright, third fight of the night is a welterweight fight. We have Johan Lainesse versus Sam Peterson. Both of these guys are from Contender Series, and like, also no disrespect, but like, I know Johan, but I don't really like these guys are just not the best, you know what I mean? These guys looked good in their careers until they joined the UFC, and since they joined the UFC, they're not the best anymore, I guess. I guess the UFC just signs anybody nowadays. Sam Peterson got absolutely destroyed in his last fight. He got knocked out like bad. So he's like chinny, and so there'll probably be a finish in this fight, and it's probably me, Johan, just because he has home court advantage once again. Alright, moving on to the prelims now. We have a women's strawweight fight of Gillian Robertson versus Viana. Here are the betting odds. This is an interesting fight too. If Robertson can get it to the ground, she'll probably get a submission. And if Viana can keep it standing, she can probably win in the feet. It depends on Viana's takedown defense, but I think Robertson's ground game is just way better than Viana's ground game. And so just think of that what you will. It really does depend on Viana's takedown defense. Alright, next up, we have a bantamweight fight of Sidey versus Ramon Taveras. This is actually a rematch from a Contender Series fight, and Sidey won that fight by TKO, and people said it was an early stoppage, so I guess that's why they're having a rematch. I don't really know why, because I think Sidey was winning that fight anyway, so if it was an early stoppage or not, Sidey was gonna beat him one way or another, right? And then Ramon had an impressive Contender Series fight, a second Contender Series fight, where he knocked out a grappler, and the grappler was trying to strike, so it's kind of stupid. I mean, Sidey won the first fight, so I don't see why Sidey doesn't win this fight again. So it should be in Sidey's favor. So yeah. Alright, next up, we have a featherweight fight of Charles Jourdain versus Sean Woodson. Here are the betting odds. Charles Jourdain is the hometown favorite. He's had some ups and downs in the UFC. Sean Woodson only has 1 fight in his career, but he's like fought against cans, so it's like, it doesn't really count in my opinion. I will say that Sean Woodson has a massive advantage that people are overlooking. Woodson is 6'2", he's 5 inches taller than Jourdain, and he also has a 9-inch reach advantage. So I feel like 9-inch reach advantage, 5 inches taller, I feel like this is heavily in Woodson's favor. So it's a really interesting fight because of the height and reach. It's gonna be difficult for Jourdain to take Woodson down. Jourdain is more of a grappler kind of. So I think if Woodson can keep the distance, he should win this. But Jourdain is, I like Jourdain. I think he's a very skilled fighter. So this is a fight where you can expect anything, but you also should keep in mind of Woodson's height and reach. It's gonna play a major factor, I think. And with the last fight of the prelims, we have a bantamweight fight of Brad Katona versus Garrett Armfield. Here are the betting odds. I think Brad Katona is actually a decent fighter. He was cut from the UFC for losing to Marab and then another fighter, and then he went back in the McGregor Ultimate Fighter just last year, and he won it with a fighter of the night against Cody Gibson. That was an all-out war. So if you haven't watched that, you should watch that. Garrett Armfield is kind of mid. He lost his first ever UFC fight against David Onama, who David Onama is actually like pretty good, but he got submitted by him. I don't know. It's just not that impressive. Garrett Armfield is a good fighter. He has a lot of power, but I feel like Brad Katona is he's just more experienced and will be smarter in this fight to not get absolutely destroyed. So yeah. Alright, welcome to the pay-per-view, where I think Dana White is absolutely robbing a bunch of people who are buying this because this is not pay-per-view material at all. I think Dana White should be investigated for making people pay however much the pay-per-view nowadays is, because this is not pay-per-view. You should not be paying like $80 for this, okay? First fight, it's a featherweight fight of Arnold Allen versus Movsar Evloev. Here are the betting odds. This is actually a pretty good fight, I will say. Okay, I was talking about the pay-per-view. This is a good fight. This is where it's pay-per-view, okay? It's gonna be a really interesting fight. Movsar has really good wrestling, and Arnold Allen has much better striking compared compared to him. Mozart has got a decision in all 7 of his UFC fights, and he also had a really close fight against Diego Lopez, who Diego Lopez was fighting his first ever fight in the UFC on short notice, and Lopez like almost submitted him and got him out of there. If Mozart can take Allen down, I think that he wins it, but if he doesn't take him down, it might be a long day for him on the feet against Allen. This really is a coin flip fight. I can no idea what's gonna happen in this fight because both these guys are really good. I hope that Allen wins just because Mozart is boring as shit, but we'll see what happens. All right, next up we have a middleweight fight, Chris Curtis versus Marc-Andre. Here are the betting odds. This fight doesn't belong in the main card, at least not in my opinion. Both of these guys are actually like really good. I think they're both like tough, and it's gonna be a good fight. Chris Curtis has fought really good opponents like Kevin Gastelum, and then Imavov, who he sucked against Imavov until the headbutt, but he's like a pretty decent fighter, right? And Marc-Andre is the hometown favorite here, but he hasn't fought the big names like Chris Curtis have. Both of these guys have only been knocked out once, I think, so these guys are very durable. Like I said, they're really tough, but Chris Curtis is getting old. He's like 36 now. I don't really know. I think Chris Curtis might edge just because of experience, but you have to keep in mind how bad of his fight was against Imavov and his age, and also that Marc-Andre has a hometown, but Marc-Andre isn't anything special either. So I don't really know what's gonna happen in this fight. All right, next up we have a welterweight fight, Neil Magny versus Mike Malott. Here are the betting odds. This is a classic newcomer versus veteran fight, but the only problem is the veteran is Neil Magny, and Neil Magny sucks balls. Mike Malott is actually really good in my opinion. He's finished both his fights in UFC by dominant fashion, and Neil Magny looked horrible against Ian Gary, so I feel like Mike Malott is probably just gonna roll through Neil Magny and probably just win by submission or finish. So I feel like it's just pretty straightforward. All right, next up we have a women's bantamweight title fight. Did you know about this? I didn't. Raquel Pennington versus Mayra Bueno Silva. Here are the betting odds. I'm not gonna lie, I low-key forgot about this fight, and then I also forgot it was a title fight. Mayra Bueno Silva is like crazy. Like, she's so aggressive, and her BJJ is really good. Her last loss was against Manon Fiorot. Like, she's very good too. So it's like that's a respectful loss. Raquel Pennington is coming off a close split decision against Vieira. I feel like Mayra Bueno Silva's like mentality leading up to this fight, from what I've seen, is so much more better. I've not heard a single thing from Raquel Pennington, by the way. I've seen like Mayra Bueno Silva a couple times, you know. I mean, this fight isn't all that. Amanda Nunes retiring, and now this division's kind of like should be laid to rest low-key. But I think Mayra Bueno Silva is just gonna win this because of just how aggressive she is. But I mean, if it goes to like the decision, maybe Pennington can win. I don't know. And finally, the moment we've been waiting for, the middleweight world championship, Sean Strickland versus Dricus Du Plessis. Here are the betting odds. This is like a redneck versus boar fight. Both these guys have super unique styles, but they're both kind of like brutes. Sean Strickland is a person who thrives on the front foot while fighting people who are back-footed, and Dricus just applies pressure. Stylistically, Sean struggles against people who apply pressure like Dricus does. So Dricus has the better, like in the stylistic matchup, Dricus has the advantage. A lot of people are impressed by Dricus's win against Whitaker too, but people also forget that Sean beat Izzy in dominant fashion. Styles make fights, so that's what I'm really looking forward to see. This is actually gonna be a banger fight. Dricus really got into Sean's head during the seasonal press conference too, and Sean, a composed fighter, so if he loses composure, I don't know how he'll react in the fight. I really see this fight going one of two ways. Sean loses composure and Dricus's pressure is too much for Sean, and Dricus wins via like TKO, or Sean stays composed and Dricus uses all his energy in the first 2 rounds and is gassed for the rest of the fight, and then Sean just picks him apart with boxing style and wins via decision, because even with Dricus's nose surgery, his cardio isn't the best. He's very sloppy with the way he fights. But this really is another coin flip fight. I don't know what to say about this fight. It really is just a coin flip, and I'm just excited to see it. I think the only way any of us can predict this fight is when it actually happens, what's gonna happen then. So that made no sense. I'm just looking forward to this fight. It's gonna be a really awesome fight. Both these guys are gonna go crazy because they're brutes. So yeah, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, comment, bye.